We begin the Gemara today on Daf Tezayin Amud Aleph, 3 lines from the top of the Yamud. This Gemara will continue here, the discussion we're having regarding Tzaras Abbas, or Tzaras Erve. That's the halacha by Yevamos, that is, that if you have an Erve, there's no mitzvah of Yibum. The question is, what happens to the Tzara? So there was a machlokes between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Beis Hillel says, like we learned in the beginning of the Masechta, that just like there's no Yibum for the Erve, there's no Yibum for the Tzara, for the second wife. Beis Shammai says, no, for the Tzara there is Yibum. Gemara went back and forth, and one of the things the Gemara discussed was, did Beis Shammai follow through in practice according to their opinion? And the Gemara's conclusion was, they did. Beis Shammai used to do like their opinion, b'payil. It wasn't just an opinion, but they did it b'payil this way. And the Gemara brought this from Rabbeisa ben Harkinas. So the Gemara is going to bring an interesting story about what happened here. Gufa, so this story, to go back to the story itself, bimei Rabbeisa ben Harkinas. In the times of this Tana Rabbeisa ben Harkinas, hitiru tzaras habas la'achim. So they were matter that the tzaras habas should be able to get married to a brother to do yibum, not like Beis Hillel's opinion, but like Beis Shammai's opinion. The Chachamim took this very hardly. In other words, they didn't want to accept this, that they're going to do that it was paskin like Beis Shammai and not like Beis Hillel. Because Rabbeisa ben Harkinas was a very big Chacham. So he was a big Chacham, and Rashi here says, so why did Chachamim take this so badly? Because they thought that who's the one that was matter this? This must have been Rabbeisa ben Harkinas himself. That's what they understood. They heard it, and that he was the one that was matter this. And because of this, they were worried that people are going to start doing like Beis Shammai, and they didn't want this. So therefore they said, Ve'einav, that is, Ve'einav kamu melave lebeis hamedrash. And now his eyes, he was blind. He couldn't see anymore, so he couldn't walk and come to the shul anymore. So they couldn't discuss this with him in the Beis Medrash. So Amru, that's the way you read over here, the parentheses, Amru, they said, Mi yelech v'yediyai. Who's going to go and let him know that we don't paskin this way? This is Beis Shammai's opinion. We paskin like Beis Hillel. Amalan Rabbi Yeshua said, Ani yelech. I'm going to go and talk to him about this. And avachar of me, who else is going to join him? Who's going to follow him as well? Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, I'm going to go as well. Avachar of me, and after him, together with him, who else is going to go? Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva is also going to go. So halchu, these three Tanaim went together. V'amdu al Pesach Beisai. They went and they stood by the door of his house. Nichnas Hashav Chasai, his maidservant went into him. Amrulai, she said to him, Rabbi, Chachmi Yisrael boin etzlecha. The wise of the Yidden came to see you. Amar la, so he said to her, Yikansu, tell them they can come in. V'nichnasu, they came in to Rabbeisa ben Harkinas. Tafsel Rabbi Yeshua, so he grabbed Rabbi Yeshua. I guess he couldn't see, but he recognized him and he grabbed him and Vayishivay al mitashal zav. And he made him sit down on a golden bed or maybe a golden couch. In those times they would sit in couches. Amalei, so Rabbi Yeshua says to Rabbeisa ben Harkinas, Rabbi, my Rebbe, Amar letalmidcha acher v'yeshev. You tell your other students that are here with me that he should also sit down. Amalei, so Rabbeisa ben Harkinas said to him, Miu, who's the other student that's here? So he said, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah is also here. Amar, so Rabbeisa ben Harkinas said, so Rabbeisa ben Harkinas was already older, and he was a friend of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah's father, which was Azariah. So he said, V'yeshloi ben la Azariah chavirenu. Azariah, our friend, has a son. Kara olav amikra hazeh. So he said on Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah the following pasuk, Nara yisi, I was young, and gam zakanti, and now I became old. V'leida yisi tzadik nezav, and I did not see that a tzadik should be left alone, v'zarim mevakesh lachem, and that his descendant should be searching for bread. In other words, he was saying, my friend Azariah, I knew him and he was rich, he always had what he needed, and now I see his son as well. I see that Eibusha didn't leave him, and he has what he needs. And he's a Talmud Chacham as well. Tafsai, so Rabbeisa ben Harkinas grabbed Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Vayshiva el mitashal zav, and he also made him sit down there on a golden bed. Amalei Rabbi, so Rabbi Yeshua then tells Rabbeisa ben Harkinas, Rebbe, Amar letalmidcha acher v'yeshev. Tell your other student that's here that he should also sit down. Amalei mihu, who's this other student that's here? So he said, Akiva ben Yosef. It's Akiva ben Yosef that's here. Amalei, so he said to him, Atuhu Akiva ben Yosef, Shashimcha Heilich Misayfa Eilam Vatsayfa. You're the famous Rabbi Akiva, that your name goes from one place in the world to the other place of the world. Shev bini Shev, my son, sit down over here. Kamoischa Yirbu b'Yisrael. Many like you should be amongst the Yidden. So now they began discussing with him Ninyanim and Torah. They wanted to come to the subject of Tzaras Abbas to discuss with him what they heard in his name. They began discussing with him different things in halacha. Until they brought the conversation for what they were there to discuss with him the case of Tzaras Abbas. And they said to Rabbi Yosef ben Harkinis, Tzaras Abbas mahu. What's the halacha regarding Tzaras Abbas? So he said to them, well, machlokes b'Shamai b'Hillel. The halacha, it's a machlokes between b'Shamai and b'Hillel. So they ask him, halacha kedivrei mi, and who do we paskin like regarding this machlokes? So he says to them, of course, halacha b'Hillel. We paskin like b'Hillel. Tzaras Abbas will be aser for yibum, and she can go get married to whoever she wants. Okay, they heard this from him, so they said to him, Amrulei, they said to him, V'aloi mishimcha amru, but in your name, it's being said that halacha ki b'Shamai, that the halacha is like b'Shamai. Amalehem, so Rabbi Yosef ben Harkinis said to them, what did you hear? Are you sure you heard it in my name? Daisa Shamaitim, did you hear it being said in the name of Rabbi Yosef ben Harkinis? You heard my name specifically? Oi ben Harkinis Shamaitim. Or maybe you just heard Ben Harkinis, the son of Harkinis is the one that said it, but you didn't hear in my name, Mamish, that I was the one that said this. Okay, so he says, so they said to him, that is, Amrulei Chaye Rebbe, yeah, we can swear in your name. In other words, they said, you're right, Stam Shamayna. We heard Stam, and Stam means we only heard Ben Harkinis. We did not hear that it was in your name, Rabbi Yosef ben Harkinis. So he said, Amalehem, ach kotten yeshli. I have a younger brother, B'chor Satanhu, and he's called B'chor Satan. What is it called? Why is he called B'chor Satan? So Rashi says he was very sharp and he was also very stubborn. And when he had an opinion in halacha about something, he would not change his mind. Even after and people argue with him, he wouldn't change his mind, and he would do this way like he thought is right, even for the rabbim. That's why he got this nickname of B'chor Satan. That's what Rashi over here says. Okay, but we had to bring a different mefarshim over here about this. Like upon him, the Marsha says B'chor usually means someone that B'chor gets double portion. So I mean, he was very smart. He had a double portion of wisdom, more than a regular person. And the term Satan means a person that's ready to fight, to defend his opinion. And the Yeinison Shemai, what was his real name? His name was Yeinison. And he is one of the students of Shammai. V'izaru, be careful if you're going to talk to him about this subject, that he should not come and ask you questions and refute your opinion regarding halachas. Why? Regarding this subject that you're discussing, Tzaras Abbas, whether she's mutter to get married to the Yavam or not, he has 300 answers to explain, to answer all questions that she is mutter, like Shammai's opinion. Aval, but then Rabbi Yosef ben Harkinis says, Meyedeni alai, Shemayim Varetz, I can testify for you in the name of heaven and earth, Shal Meduchazu, that regarding this mortar, regarding this subject, that it's like a mortar that you use to crush, because it's a difficult subject to take apart and to understand. Yoshav Chagi Anovi. Chagai Anovi already sat on this subject, and Va'amar, and he said, Shloish Dvarim. There were 3 halachas that Chagai Anovi said, and one of them was regarding this. So the first halacha he said was Tzaras Abbas Asura. The Tzara of Abbas, which is an erve, is asur for yibum, like Beis Hillel, and that's how we paskin. The second halacha he said Aminu Moyav Maisrin Maisrani B'Shvius. Aminu Moyav, which is on the other side of the Yarden. Over there, you have to take Maiser Ani from the produce that grows during Shemitah. Okay? In other words, the point over here is that during Shemitah you can't plant B'chlal in your field. So, and there's no din of Meiser B'chlal. We had this once before in the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah. But he said that in Amanu Mayav, that was not sanctified to be Eretz Yisrael when they came to Eretz Yisrael the second time, and therefore they were able to plant over there. And they instituted that they should give Meiser Ani in that time. The Gemara is soon going to explain it again, as we'll see. The third halacha that Chagia and Novi said, Umekablin Geirim, you could accept Geirim min a Karduyin min a Tardumim. Tarmudim. You can accept Gedim from Karduyim and Tarmudim, as we'll see soon. The Gemara will explain, even though that was a place that it could be that over there were Mamzedim. That really they were not Goyim. They were really Mamzedim, because it was B'nai Yisrael, it was Yiddish girls that went and got married to Goyim. And according to one opinion, that makes the children into Mamzedim. So he's saying, no, they're not Mamzedim, and you could accept Gedim from that area. Again, the Gemara is soon going to discuss this separately, as we'll see. Okay, so this was the end of the conversation that these Tanoim had with Rabbi Dosa ben Harkinas. What's continuation? What happened now? So Tana, we learned in Abraise, Keshenichnesu, when they entered to speak to Rabbi Dosa ben Harkinas about this, Nichnesu b'Pesach Echad. They all came in from the same doorway. Kesheyatsu, but then when they were going out to leave, Yatsu b'Shloisha Psachim. They did not go out together, they went out in 3 different doorways. So Taisus here has 2 pshatim why they divided and went out from different doorways. One pshat Taisus says is because they wanted to sort of make their way out unnoticed, so they shouldn't bump into his brother Yonasan. They were afraid of him. Another pshat Taisus says is punkt vakert. They wanted to make sure they're not going to miss him. So they didn't want to all go out from one doorway. They made sure each one should go out from another doorway, so someone is going to find him and have this discussion with him. So what happened? Pagaboy Rabbi Akiva. So Rabbi Akiva bumped into him, and then actually Rabbi Akiva. So he asked him he asked Rabbi Yonasan asked Rabbi Akiva all these questions that he said before, right? That he had all these questions when he get to this case of Tzaras Abbas. He had 300 questions about this. Rabbi Akiva was answering him. He answered him all his questions. But he was still stubborn in his opinion, like the Gemara said before, and he said to Rabbi Akiva, Atu hu Akiva, you are Akiva, sheshimcha heilach misayf eilam v'atzayfai, that your name goes from one end of the world to the other. Ashrecha shezechisa l'shem. You're fortunate that you were zeicha to such a great name. But v'dayin lo yagata l'roye bakar. You still haven't come to the level of learning like the shepherds of Bakar, of the flock of behemoths. He's telling him, you still have a way to go to learn more Torah, to understand more on your Torah. Amalai, so Rabbi Akiva responds to him, Rabbi Akiva v'afilu l'roye tzayin. Even I didn't even reach to the level of roye tzayin, of someone that's a shepherd of tzayin, of sheep. In other words, you say he's being humble and saying, yeah, you're right. I'm not even on the level of roye tzayin. The Marsha actually says of it regarding this Gemara, that Roye Bakar is a term that it uses regarding Chagei Hanavi, regarding the later Nevi'im, that they were Roye Bakar. And Roye Tzayin refers to Moshe Rabbeinu. By Moshe Rabbeinu it says, when he went to Midian, it was a Roye Tzayin. So what he was telling, what this Yonasan ben Harkinas was telling Rabbi Akiva was that you're saying your opinion based on what you heard from Chagei Hanavi, that he was from the Roye Bakar and he said Tzaras Abbas is Aser. But you haven't reached to that level, you can't rely on him basically. Don't rely on what he said, because I'm telling you I have reasons why it's mutter, like Shammai's opinion. So Rabbi Akiva answered him, and no, I'm not even getting it from Chagei Hanavi. This goes back to Moshe Rabbeinu. This is our Kabbalah and our Messiah that we learned. We had before the sources, the Gzeir Shaveh, of Aleha and Litzrar. We have sources from the Torah from Moshe Rabbeinu that Tzaras Abbas is Asura. Okay, now the Gemara explains what was the other 2 halachas that Rabbi Dosa ben Harkinas said that he received by Kabbalah from Chagei Hanavi. So he said that Amen Amayev Meiser Meiserani b'Shvius. That in Amen Amayev you give Meiserani even a Shemitah. So what is this halacha? The Omar, so the master explained, Harbe Krachim Kafshoyle Mitzrayim. There are many cities that the Yidden, when they came up from Mitzrayim the first time to Eretz Yisrael, they conquered all these cities. V'le Kafsho Oile Bavel. And Oile Bavel, when they came the second time, they did not conquer them. Now, what's the halacha? Kedusha Rishayna. The first level of sanctity of Eretz Yisrael, when they were Mekadesh the first time. So, Kitchel Shaita. That was Kedusha, remained then as long as they were in Eretz Yisrael. But V'lei Kitchel Asad Lavai. But for the future, once they were expelled from Eretz Yisrael, and they came back a second time, the Kedusha of the first time does not remain. You have to be Mekadesh Eretz Yisrael again. So now they conquered all these places again, but Vihinichum, these places on the other sides of the Yarden, where the lands of Sichon and Oig, which is also called Ammon and Moav, even though they conquered it again, but they left it and they did not sanctify it again. Why not? In order that those areas should not be part of Eretz Yisrael, so they should be able to plant there even during Shemitah, and the poor people should have from where to eat. They should be able to rely on this during the time of Shemitah. Right, so Rashi explains what that means is, first of all, the poor people will have to work during the time of Shemitah. If they're not going to have any work to do in the fields, then they're not going to have any income. So first of all, they'll be able to work during Shemitah and make an income. And second of all, they also instituted that they should give them the Ma'aseh Rishon and Ma'aseh Ani in the year of Shemitah, so they'll have the Leket, Shikha, and Peah, and the other Ma'asehs that you give in the field, even though from the rest of Eretz Yisrael, there was no produce growing and they didn't have what to eat. That was the second halacha that they got from Chagei Hanavi. Third halacha was Mekablim Geidim, and you accept Geidim min Karduyim v'Tarmudim, from these two areas, from Karduyim and Tarmudim. And the Gemara will soon discuss more in detail what would be the issue of why you should or shouldn't accept Geidim from there. But first, the Gemara brings that there seems to be a contradiction to this. Aini, is this true? But Vatani Rami by Yecheskel. So Rami by Yecheskel said, Ein mekablim Geidim and Karduyim v'Tarmudim. You do not accept Geidim from those two places of Karduyim and Tarmudim. So Karduyim, that is, it does not say Tarmudim here, sorry. So you see over here that you don't accept Geidim. Ravashi, so Ravashi answers, Kartuyim itmar. It's Kartuyim, it's not the same. Kartuyim with a tough. Kedamri inchi, people say, Kartuyim psulim. The Kartuyim are puzzle, they're not goyim. They're really just mamzeidim and they're puzzle, and you're not makabel any geidim from them. They're just mamzeidim. Kedamri, others said, another version of how this discussion here went down. Tani Rami by Yecheskel. Rami by Yecheskel said, Ein makabel geidim in a Kartuyim. You don't accept Geidim from Kartuyim. So he originally right away said Kartuyim with a tough. So the Gemara asked the question, my love, don't you think Haina Kartuyim, Haina Karduyim? Aren't the Kartuyim and Karduyim the same people from the same place? It's just pronounced a bit differently. And therefore the question is that it says that you could accept Geidim. And he's saying you can't. Ravashi, it's not the same individuals. Kartuye l'chod v'karduye l'chod. Kartuye are one people and Karduye are other people, so it's not a question. Kedamri inchi, Kartuye psili. The Kartuye with the tav, they are the ones that are pasul. But now the Gemara brings another opinion that argues on this. Rabbi Yechanan v'Savya, Rabbi Yechanan and Savya, the Omri Tarvayu, they both said, Ein mekablen geidim in the Tarmudim, that you can't accept geidim from Tarmudim. Okay, so before it said that the Kabbalah from Chagei Hanavi was you could, but they said no, you can't accept Geidim from Tarmudim, and again we'll see soon the Gemara what's the reason why not. But before the Gemara explains, the Gemara first asks again a contradiction on what we're saying here in the name of Rabbi Yechanan. Rabbi Yechanan Hachi, did Rabbi Yechanan say that you can't accept Geidim from this area in Eretz Yisrael of Tarmudim? But what now? We learned in the Mishnah as follows. Anytime you see any stain of blood from a woman's garment in the area of Rekem, which is a place in Eretz Yisrael, Tahirim. So this will be Tahir. Why is that? Because this is not an area where Yidden live there, it's an area of Goyim, and a stain that comes from a Goy is not going to be Tameh. If it comes from a Yid, so this can be blood from a Nida, and it's Tameh. But in an area, Rekem was on the border of Eretz Yisrael, so it's an area where Goyim live, so therefore it's Tahir. Rabbi Yehuda metame, but Rabbi Yehuda disagrees. Rabbi Yehuda says no, it's tameh. Why? Mipnei, they're not goyim. Mipnei shein geidim. They're actually geidim that live in that area, v'toyim, and they got assimilated amongst the goyim, but really they're geidim. So it's blood from a nida, and the garments are tameh. But then he finishes off and says, mi bein ha'oivdei kachavim. If it's a garment that comes from an area where there's goyim, any other area in Eretz Yisrael where there's goyim, tahirim, then it will be pure. Then there's no issue. That's the conclusion of what Rabbi Yehuda said. Now, v'avinon ba. So the question was asked on this. Kapasik v'tani. The Mishnah here says very like a straight statement without making any distinctions that mi bein ha'ivdei kechavim. If it comes from an area where there are goyim living there, and so over there, this garment that has a stain of blood on it, so it's going to be tired because the goyim are there. That would mean vafilim in tarmid. That should include even this area of Tarmaid. That was an area where there was a discussion or a suffix about this, whether there are Yidden there or Goyim there. And he's saying Rekem is an issue. The area of Rekem is a place that even though it seems like they're Goyim, but really they are Geidim that assimilated with Goyim. But anything other than that place, including the area of Tarmaid, where there was also a suffix about this, over there he's saying that we consider them to be Goyim, and it'll be Tar. That's what it seems from what Rabbi Yehuda is saying. Now, based on this, Rabbi Yochanan came along and said, Zoi say meres. So this end of the Mishnah, let me just clarify again, this is very important for the Hemshech of the Gemara. The end of the Mishnah when it says, Mi bein ha'ovdei kechavim tahayrim, this is actually not Rabbi Yehuda speaking, this is the Stam Mishnah saying here. This is the conclusion of the Mishnah itself, Stam Mishnah saying this. Now Rabbi Yochanan said, Zoi say meres, mekablen geirim mitarmid. Since we're saying that any garment that came from any other place in Eretz Yisrael where it was clear that it's Goyim, including this place of Tarmid, so we consider it to be all Goyim, so that means it's not an area which are Geirim or Mamzedim, but they're really Goyim, and therefore, if they want to come and be accepted as Geirim, we could accept them as Geirim. If they were Mamzedim, so then you can't, there's no point of being Megayah them, they're just Mamzedim. But from this, that the Stam Mishnah here says that the stains that come from there are all tar because it's all Goyim, so that means that you could accept Geirim from here. So what does this mean? Before Rabbi Yochanan said that you can't accept Geirim from the people of Tarmudim. And now he's saying you could. What's going on? So now if you want to answer and say, Zois v'lei sfirile. Rabbi Yochanan is just saying, Zois meres. This means, this is the pshat in that Mishnah. But he doesn't hold like that Mishnah. That's not his own opinion. You can't say this because Rabbi Yochanan said, Halacha kestam Mishnah, that you passed in like a Stam Mishnah. So over here you have a Stam Mishnah that's saying that in the place of Tarmoid, the stains there are tar because it's all Goyim. And Rabbi Yochanan before is saying that no, they're not Goyim and you don't accept Geirim from there. So the Gemara says, okay, you're right, we're going to have to say, Amiroi ninu va'aliba de Rabbi Yochanan. This is a machlekes Amiroim regarding what Rabbi Yochanan's opinion is. Do we paskin like the Stam Mishnah, or do we not paskin like the Stam Mishnah? So there's Amiroim that are arguing about this. Okay, but now after this discussion, the Gemara comes back to explain the subject itself. What exactly is the issue with this place of Tarmoid, whether you should or should not accept Geirim from there? So the Gemara mi Tarmoid my time aloi. So from Tarmoid, why would you not accept Geirim from there? So Pligi bar Rabbi Yochanan v'Savia, Rabbi Yochanan and Savia, that both said that you don't accept Geirim from there. So they argued a little bit of two different versions about what it is about this place. Chad Omar, one said Mishum Avdei Shloimeh. There were the slaves, the Avodim Kananim, Goyish slaves from Shloimeh HaMelech, that what happened was, there were Bnei Yisrael, there were Jewish girls that got married to these slaves of Shloimeh HaMelech. Rashi over here says that these slaves from Shloimeh HaMelech were very rich, and they lived there in that area, and they were Goyim, and there were Yiddish girls that got married to them. And because Yiddish girls got married to them, so therefore the children are really Yidden. They had Yiddish mothers, they're not Goyim. But according to this opinion, Rashi says that the children are considered to be a mamzer. This is a very big chiddush. We don't paskin this way. There's a big, long discussion over here in Taisus and the Rishonim about this. But Rashi over here is saying that according to this opinion, the children that are born from a Yiddish mother and a Goyish father have a halacha of a mamzer. Okay, like I said, we paskin that a child that's born from a chayv krisis is a mamzer, not from a Goyish father. But this was his opinion. So therefore he says they're mamzedim. They're Yidden, they're mamzedim, you can't be megayah them, there's no point. Chad Omar, another one said that the reason is Mishum B'nois Yerushalayim. That there were B'nois Yerushalayim, as the Gemara will explain here, in the time of the Churban, they got married to Goyim. So the Gemara now explains this. The opinion that says that it was the slaves of Shloimeh HaMelech that the Yiddish girls got married to Kosovar. So his opinion is Ovid Kechavim ve'Eved. Haba Bas Yisrael, you have a Goy or an Eved Kanani that gets married or has a relation with Bas Yisrael, with a Yiddish girl, Havlad Mamzer. The child will be a Mamzer. But the opinion that says that it was the daughters of Yerushalayim, so what is the story that happened? What did the daughters of Yerushalayim do wrong here exactly, that the children are mamzedim? Pligi bar, Rav Yosef and the Rabbanan argued, and they had two versions about this. V'tarvai mishmei de Rabbi Bar Bachana. Both of them said this in the name of Rabbi Bar Bachana. Chadama, one version of the story was, and again, this was in the time of the Churban. So one version was, Treiser Alfi Gavri, there were 12,000 men of Goyim that came, they conquered then Yerushalayim. V'shita Alfi Kashtuye. In addition, there were another 6,000 men that were with bow and arrow. That's one opinion. So together there were 18,000 men. V'chadama Treisa Alfi Gavri, there were 12,000 men. Uminayu Shita Alfi Kashtuye. And from them, 6,000 of them were men with bow and arrow. So there were only 12,000. So these men, when the Oivdi and the Goyim came, they destroyed the Beis HaMikdash, and they all entered into the Heichel of the Beis HaMikdash. So Akoil, all of those Goyim, Niftnu al Kesef Ezav, they went to grab silver and gold that was there. But for Haim, these 12 or 18,000 men, Niftnu al Bnei Yerushalayim, they went to attack and to take from the daughters of the Yidden to have relations with them. Shenema, the pasuk says, Nashim b'tzion inu, the women in Tzion, which is Yerushalayim inu, they were pained. B'sula is ba'are Yehuda, the virgins in the city of Yehuda. So this is what happened then in this area of Tarmoid, according to this opinion. This refers to this area where they lived, where they had relations with Goyim, and therefore the children are mamzerim, according to this opinion. The Gemara now goes back to a pasuk that was quoted in Amud Aleph, that Rab Deise ben Harkinis said when he saw Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. He said, Nara Yisi v'gam zakanti. So the Gemara now brings back this pasuk and brings another pshat in this pasuk. Om Rab Shmuel ben Achmeni, Om Rab Yonasan, pasuk zeh. This pasuk of Nara Yisi, Sara Ilam Amre, the minister of the world, which is a malach, is the one that said this. And he says, Nara Yisi gam zakanti. Who is saying I was a young lad and I became old? Man Amre. Is the Eibishter himself the one that's saying this? How could he say? So, do you have any old age by the Eibishter, that the Eibishter is saying I was young and now old? So it's simply, this is a pasuk in Tilim. So it's David HaMelech that's saying this, but that also can't be. Was David HaMelech such an old person that he's saying Zakanti? This is a pasuk that a Malach is saying this. Rab Shmuel ben Achmeni, Rab Yonasan, another pasuk. Rab Shmuel ben Achmeni, Rab Yonasan, Darshan. What's the meaning of the pasuk where it says? So this is describing this pasuk in Eicha, describing the Churban, Yodai Paras Tsar, the hand of the enemy, of the one that's coming to make trouble for Yidden, spread out his hand, Al Kol Machmadel, on everything that's precious to Yidden. What does this refer to? Zeh Ammon Umayev. This refers to the people, to the Goyim from Ammon Umayev. When all the Goyim came into the Beis HaMikdash to destroy the Beis HaMikdash, Hakoil Nifnu al Kesef Ezav. So all the Goyim went to grab from silver and gold. But for Haim, these Goyim Nifnu al Sefer Torah, they went to grab the Sefer Torah. Why? Amru, they said, Zeh shekosov by. This Sefer Torah that it says, and it's specifically targeting us. That any convert, any ger coming from Ammon Umayev could not come and marry in Klal Yisrael, Yisarev Be'esh, should be burnt in fire. Then another pasuk Yidashin that says, Tziva Hashem leYaakov, Svivav Tzarav, the Eibishter commanded for Yaakov that all their enemies around them should come and cause them suffering. Amarav, when was this? Kagain Humniya lePumnara, the Goyim from Humniya that caused trouble for the Yidden of Pumnara. Okay, now the Gemara goes back, connected to the point that we spoke about before, B'negayah to Goyim, even in today's times, or in those times, the Gemara is saying there could be an area where there's a chashash that maybe there are Goyim that you think they're Goyim, but they're really Yidden. It's a very interesting piece of Gemara here. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav Asi, Oivit kechavim shekidish bizman hazeh. A guy that's Mekadesh, a Yid, that gets married to a Yid today, Chayshishin leKiddushin. You have to be concerned that this Kiddushin takes effect. In other words, a guy that's Mekadesh, a Yid, the Kiddushin doesn't take effect at all. It's nothing. But he says today, when a guy is Mekadesh, a Yid, you have to be concerned that maybe this is a Kiddushin. Why? Shema me'aseres hashvatim. Because maybe this Kiddushin is not really with the guy. Maybe you think it's a guy, but really it comes from the Aseres HaShvatim that left Eretz Yisrael much earlier during the time of the first Beis HaMikdash, and they got spread around in places, and therefore, how do you know this could be from Aseres HaShvatim? So the Gemara asks on this, why would we be concerned about this? But Vaha, called the Parish, Miruba Parish, don't we have a rule that you always go after the Roiv, after the majority? And that is, if they are not in their place, in their settled place. Parish, if you have a majority and a minority, and the minority, or the majority that is Parish, was Parish from their place where they're settled in one place, so you follow the Roiv. Right? This is the rule b'negayah to Roiv and Kavua. We learned about this a few times before in the Gemara, that any time you have a minority, but the minority is set and established in their place, Kavua, where they are, that minority does not become bottle, or it doesn't follow the status of the Roiv, because this is their place that's choshev where they are. But if you have a majority that's parish, that's not in their settled place, then you follow the Reiv. So even if the Aseres HaShvatim were exiled from Eretz Yisrael and they were amongst the nations in the world, but they're parish from their place, they're not settled in one place, so therefore you should follow the majority, which are Goyim. So why are we concerned about this? So the Gemara answers, you're right. Stam anywhere in the world, if a guy is Mekadosh Yid, you're not concerned for the Kedushin. But what we are concerned about is in those cities, in those places where they are kavua, where it is their settled place where they live. And therefore, Rashi's pshat over here is, look in the last Rashi of the Amud, Rashi says that in those cities where the Aseres HaShvatim live, and the Gemara here will bring psukim where we know where they are, where they live, so over there we will apply the rule of kol kavua kemechza al mechza dami. That if, since this is the place which is kavua, we don't follow the majority, it's considered to be like half and half, and therefore we have to be chayshish that the Kedushin may have been from the Aseres HaShvatim. That's Rashi's pshat. Taisus disagrees because Taisus says the concept of kavua doesn't necessarily apply over here, because even if it's their cities that they live in, it's not for kavua. It's not enough that it should be in your city. Kavua has to be that you're actually in your personal place, your personal dwelling, your personal house that you live in. So even if it's the city of the Aseres HaShvatim, but nevertheless, it's not necessarily in that area gufa, is it the place where the Aseres HaShvatim are actually living. If any one of the Aseres HaShvatim leaves his house and goes and is Mekadosh a woman out of his house, so it's not anymore kavua. Taisus says, the Gemara means to say that in those areas where they live, there was roiv Aseres HaShvatim. That's what it means. Not mitzad halacha of kavua, but mitzad halacha of roiv. Okay, there's actually a sikha from the Rebbe in Chelik Yites Parsha Shoftim where the Rebbe discusses this barichis, and the Rebbe there says that you see a very machlokes between Rashi and Taisus regarding this subject of kavua, at least in this case, in this scenario. According to Rashi, kavua would follow even the status of the whole city. And the Rebbe says it's because the pasuk here, the Gemara is going to bring psukim, which defines these cities as the cities of Aseres HaShvatim. So therefore, not only the particular house of one individual, but the whole city is considered to be kavua for Aseres HaShvatim. Whereas Taisvis holds, no, it has to be every individual person if he's kavua in his house. So let's just see the conclusion here. The Gemara brings the psukim regarding the places where the Aseres HaShvatim lived. So the psukim are, the Omer Ab Abba, Bar Kahana, Vayanchem, they were placed in these cities which are Bachlach, Bechover, and Nahar Geizen, Va'are Madai. That's the places where they were. The Gemara now translates where these places are. Chalach ze Chilazain. That's a place called Chilazain. The Chibur, the next place it says Chibur, Zu Chadayov. And Nahar Geizen ze Ginzik. And Va'are Madai ze Chemdoin. And then the pasuk there also says V'chavroi Seha. And other cities around this. And where are they? V'amri La, Zu Nihar. And this is near V'chavroi Seha, on its cities that are around it. And what are those cities? And Chavrei Seah Man, what are the other cities? Omar Shmuel says Krach, Moishchi, and Chitki, Vedunkiye. Those are the other cities that are around over there. Okay, so those are the areas where the Aseres HaShvatim lived, and on this the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yechanan, V'kulan Lifsoil. And for all these places, so these are the Aseres HaShvatim that live there, and it's not Goyim, they are Apostle Yidden. So Rashi explains that when the Gemara says V'kulan Lifsoil, so the reason why they're apostle over there is not only because they intermarried with Goyim, like the opinion we said before. There's an opinion before that when a Yid intermarries with Goyim, the children will be Mamzedim. But even without that, Rashi says, even if you don't follow like that opinion, the Aseres HaShvatim were not careful. They got married to one another in a way, even Isuri Arayis, even Isuri Arayis of Kadas, and therefore the children were Mamzedim, and therefore they're apostle. You can't get married to them.